There was a guy that was just wearing a Speedo, too.
It's been so long.
Welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and I'm here with Tom Roberge from Albertine and New Directions. And we have a couple topics of things that we're going to talk about today. And I guess we can start with the big one, being that the Nobel Prize in Literature was handed out last Thursday to Svetlana Alexievich, who's an author that we actually published at Dalkey Archive years ago, and I believe is one of the first books I ever gave you, right?
If not, yeah, it was definitely among the first books you ever gave me. Definitely.
I was trying to remember if that's the first time I met you.
I feel like it was, because I don't think we met at the bookstore first. I think we met at the public space offices first, because you were meeting with Bridget.
Exactly. That's what I think, too. The more that I thought about it, the more that seemed to make sense, that I went to see her and you at a public space, gave you Voices from Chernobyl. It would have been around the time of the Penworld Voices Festival, too, like one of the first ones.
Is that right?
Yeah, because the reason I remember that is because I went to an event at the city center or whatever it is called, the big huge thing, and met Amber Qureshi there and gave her a copy that led to her buying the paperback rights for Picador.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, so this is kind of cool for me. I mean, it sucks that Open Letter doesn't publish the book, but nevertheless, it's the first time one of these Nobel Prize winners has been announced where I actually knew the person and their work, like right away, not just like tangentially or like a little bit, but like, oh yeah, I know this person's pretty well,
right?
Which is kind of fun. But okay.
So, what are your thoughts? What do you think about it?
I think it's interesting because it is, and she's important. I think that what she does is really spectacular. A lot of her books follow this similar sort of premise where she interviews a lot of people about a particular topic and then transforms their responses into like monologues. So it is, the people in the press keep referring to it as like this blend of journalism and fiction, which I guess that's the best way to describe it, but that sounds really weird and hokey to me. But it is like, I think it's really important what she's done with using that format. So there's a book, Zinky Boys, is one of the first ones, one of her earlier books, that's about the war between Russia and Afghanistan. And I think the Zinky Boys reference refers to the fact that they were shipped back in like zinc coffins and about all the deaths that there were for the stupid war. And that got her in a lot of trouble with the KGB and the Russian government, obviously, because it was not, positive about their involvement in this conflict. And then Voices from Chernobyl, I think, is stunningly good because it was written in 1996, 10 years after the catastrophe, and she went and interviewed all these people. I think there's like 100 voices in that book. Interviewed all these people, and while she was doing it, she even got really, really sick. And people thought that she had been poisoned by the KGB, and they had to sneak her out of the country because they thought that her life was in danger. And as it turned out, it was it was that the radiation that was left over from the incident had depleted her immune system and basically just fucked her up really bad. So she took all those interviews and transformed them into these little mini monologues. And I think each one of those is incredibly powerful. And taken as a whole, it gives like a really important statement on like how that tragedy was awful, but was like made more tragic by the fact that the Russian government lied to everyone, covered it up, was not in any way forthcoming, sent their people in to literally just die, because they could. It was it's like a horrible incident of the 20th century. I think that's pretty important. Her other books, there's one that I remember we looked at Dalkey that was about like love and women. And that one seemed less politically charged, same sort of style. And then when I was in Iceland a few years ago, she was there and she talked about her most recent book, which is I don't remember what it's actually called, but it's about the Russian intellectuals and how nothing's really changed in the past 40 years. that they're the same complaints, the same issues, the same everything. And I think that'll be an interesting book to read when it comes out in English as well. What did you think of Voices from Chernobyl?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I love that kind of book that, it's a little bit, I mean, Howard Zinn did a very different thing, but, because he was working with historical documents as opposed to first-person narratives. But, giving a truly public account of something horrible that happened, and especially something that was allowed to happen at the hands of a very large, very capable government that could have stepped in and done a lot of good, as opposed to choosing to do literally nothing, and in some cases making it worse by lying and covering things up. I love that. I mean, it's a huge part of free journalism, and especially in Russia, to do something like that at the time is incredibly valuable. And her style, like you said, the way she transformed those things is just like distilled them into those beautiful passages is really great.
Yeah, they're haunting. Like the one with the guy who like came home because I mean part of the deal was that they had like robots or mechanical equipment to clean up the radiation leak and all that on the top of the reactor, but it was so bad that the robots wouldn't function, so everything was shut down, which is why they sent all these firefighters in there, because it's like human beings won't shut down, they'll just eventually die. And they're like, oh, we'll give you like all kinds of great rewards once you're done with doing this, and knowing full well like the people are going to die. And one of the people who didn't was a firefighter who brought back his helmet and gave it to his son, who then promptly got brain cancer and died like a year later. That's one of the ones that's just like fucking intense. Yeah, I agree. She's like, so, and it's interesting. Has there been like someone who's more of a journalist that's won the Nobel Prize recently?
I can't think of anyone. I mean, isn't she the first non-novelist in at least 10, 15 years? I mean, Transformer was a poet, but...
Right. But like, yeah, I think so. I'm trying to see like who the full list is here, but everyone that comes to mind is like, yeah, they're all novelists or poets for the most part. So I mean, that's pretty impressive and good for her.
I mean, it used to be like when Sartre won it. It was yes, he wrote a couple novels and some plays and everything, but by the end he was writing. By the time he won it, he was writing, philosophy books and treatises and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely room for it. It's not like the Academy has never done it.
Right.
But
not recently.
It's about time they did it again.
Yeah, not recently at all. So congratulations to her. I think that the book, the paperback of Voices from Chernobyl, is still available from Picador, and I think I heard that Delkey's going to reprint a hardcover version. It's like a print-on-demand thing right now to try and capitalize on that. So that should be available sometime soon too.
Who's going to buy that?
I don't think anyone. Maybe someone who's like wants to collect it because they feel like that it's more of a book. Maybe. I don't know.
Fair enough. Maybe some libraries. I don't know.
We sold a shitload of that. Wait, what's that?
Print-on-demand hardcovers do not look good.
No, they do not. And we sold that. Our local Rochester library has 8 copies of Voices from Chernobyl. So if that's
8?
If they have 8, I don't know how many libraries are going to be swooping up this new print-on-demand version.
8? That's impressive.
Yep. That's a lot. Who knows why? Who knows?
Wait, so you said this book about Russian intellectualism, you made it sound as though it's definitely coming out in English? Is that true?
Supposedly, I was interested in doing it, but we didn't act fast enough. I actually knew some other people that were also interested and just didn't really pursue it that well. But I believe that the world rights were sold to Fitzcarraldo Editions in the UK, and that's referenced in like the LA Times write-up on this as well. But I don't know if there's any time frame for when this book will come out, and I don't know I don't believe it has a U.S. publisher yet, because I know someone who made an offer that was rejected.
Okay.
So and Fitzcarraldo now can just sit there and like wait for one of the big five to make a nice fat offer to them.
Yeah, I mean, Norton or Harcourt or whatever they're called these days, Houghton Mifflin, will likely come in and do something, I would guess, right?
Do you think it's going to be one of them?
I mean, they're like the stragglers on the Modiano stuff. So yeah, I think there's a good chance.
That's true. I mean, that makes sense that it would be one of them. I could see it. Yeah, you're probably right. Although Norton is doing that, but so is Yale has done a lot of the Modiano books.
Yes, but they're commissioning their own translations. I don't know that Yale is going to want to buy Fitzcarraldo's translation. That seems not to be in their model.
I don't think so either. And you don't think it would be like Knopf for anyone like that?
I don't think so. Do you?
I could see it going both ways. I could see it if there's someone somewhere. I mean, that's an editor at one of those presses that did like Voices from Chernobyl and is interested in this. It seems possible, but I think it really depends. I don't know who that person would be.
I think if Picador, I mean, I know they're reprinting right now Voices from Chernobyl. If they had a translation in hand that they could rush out and get it out in stores in 2 months, they would do it. But
right, and I don't think that that's the case.
Right, and in which case, I think Picador would probably say, look, the window of opportunity here is going to close. We're just not going to do it.
Right, yeah. Because people aren't going to be... I mean, Chernobyl is going to be the book, I think, that people will read for a long time, because it's a subject that we're aware of, that we know about, that impacted people here. It's always tripped me out that, like, my students have no idea, because they were all born way after that. So, like,
right.
They don't know anything about it. And I remember waking up to, like, the radio on my little alarm clock when that happened and just freaking out. So, like, there's a huge cloud of radioactive dust, like, floating over Europe that's on its way to Los Angeles. It's just like, what the hell? This can't happen. It's bad.
It's a good thing these things don't happen as much these days. There was 3 Mile Island, there was...
Yep.
And some others. It's a bad time.
It really was. It was horrible. I remember, did you have to watch in school, like, it would have been, like, I guess in maybe elementary or junior high, like, those various movies about, like, nuclear power, safe or not, and, like, all kinds of, like, things related to that?
Yes, absolutely. This was usually done in relation to a local power company building a nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Upstream from some small community.
It's like, and there'd be some weird propaganda film.
Right.
Oh, Jesus Christ, that was a crazy time. But you mentioned that you had some conversations with people recently about the whole idea of world rights versus North American rights. And since this book is one of those that's tied up in that, did you want to talk about that for a minute and explain that situation?
Yeah. It's I mean, I get customers at the store who want English publishers translations, like Camus' The Stranger was just retranslated by Penguin UK, but they don't have U.S. rights for that, so I can't order it. And people just look at me like I don't understand. I'm like, they cannot legally distribute it to the U.S. I cannot legally acquire it to do that. Like, we could go through some shady back way, and that's fine, but it's not supposed to happen. And people just look at me like I don't understand. I'm like, well, there are rights issues, and I don't know that a lot of people, in interest of continuing our, how publishing works, sort of long ongoing sub-seminar of these podcasts, like when we did with Alex and we talked about contracts and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when a European publisher, and let's be realistic, most things that are sold into the U.S. come through Europe, even if they're coming through other countries first, right? If it's an African book, chances are the reason we're hearing about it is because whatever language it was written in, it was published in that language somewhere in Europe, whether it's in Portuguese or French or English. I guess English would be different, but, German, whatever. It's coming through a European publisher. Same thing often, unfortunately, with Latin American books. They have to go, as Margaret said, through Spain, and then they come to the U.S. Mexico is different. Obviously, they're very close to us. And then Asia is its own separate thing, and they come directly to us. But for a lot of stuff, what happens is the people with the rights, someone in France, someone in Germany, comes to a U.S. publisher and says, do you want to buy the English rights to this? And if the publisher is interested, they will make an offer, and that offer can include world English, meaning they then have the rights to distribute the finished book, the translation, throughout the world. And that includes, non-English countries, obviously. English books are sold legally in France and in Germany and Spain and everything. It could mean, another thing could be just North American, which, is obviously Canada and like Puerto Rico and other places where English language books would be sold. Or it could just be U.S. rights. Then there's, because at the same time, they are trying to sell these rights into the UK market. And depending on what the book is, these savvy agents or whomever represent the rights will go to both at the same time, the UK publishers and the American publishers. Sometimes they'll go to the UK publishers first, thinking they might get a sale there and then use that to, vault into a US sale. Or if they think it's something really, that'll make the money, your Carlos Ruiz Zafón or something like that, they'll go right to the US because there's obviously just much more money at stake in the US market, just as a matter of scale. Now, a lot of times what happens, and what were we talking about? The Mathias and Nard, how they have the French, who is it, Eacute, already has a British publisher set up. They have a long-time publisher for him, yes?
Yeah.
And it's who?
For which author?
Mathias and Nard?
No. Okay, you want to get into this one? Okay.
I'm just curious. Do they have a British publisher?
No, they do. Okay, so the way that worked, when Zone came out, this is a perfect story for this. And I'll try and keep it all above board too. So when Zone came out in France, it won a ton of attention and awards and got a lot of hype for it. It was also the same fall that the economy collapsed. So at Frankfurt, they were trying to sell the book to everyone. And the Jonathan Littell book had just come out from FSG, and they're like, oh, well, they'll want to do the next Nard book too, or they want to do a Nard too because it's another big French novel, whatever. And obviously they didn't, and we made an offer there for the world rights. They wouldn't sell us the world rights. They would only sell us the U.S. ones. However, because they didn't look like they were going to have anyone in the UK who was really interested in doing a 518-page, one-sentence book, they agreed to this weird clause in the contract whereby if they didn't sell the UK rights within 1 year of our publication of the US book, then we could distribute the book in the UK. So that there would be UK readers for the book would have access to it. Because otherwise it would seem stupid to cut that off if they didn't have any success selling it. They did not have any success selling it, so they ended up allowing us to sell our book in the UK. Then, for the next book of his, Street of Thieves, they immediately sold us the world rights because there was no one had been interested in Zone. They didn't have anyone in the UK interested in Street of Thieves at that time, so we bought them. That's when Fitzcarraldo came into existence, and the first books they wanted to publish were these two Nard books. So they bought the UK rights to Zone from Eacute, and then bought Street of Thieves from us. And that's how they ended up doing the UK version of those two books. The new book, we've made an offer on and we have not heard. So I don't know what their plan is now, but I suspect they're going to want to split it and do UK rights for Fitzcarraldo and US rights for someone else.
Right. And the last part of this, what comes along with it, and I don't know if you get these emails at Open Letter, but I get them in New Directions all the time, is for someone who isn't in one of the US or the UK and wants a copy of this book, it's often unclear to those people which, say you're in Australia or India, how to get the book. And I often have to write back and say, look, I know, the UK hasn't published an edition of this book, but we do not have what's called Commonwealth rights. We cannot legally sell the book in Australia. We have North American rights only. That's it. And, I get these requests back. They're like, but I see it on Amazon Australia. And I'm like, that's fine. We had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But I can't legally distribute the book there. I'd be stepping on this presumptive future publisher's toes by doing that. And the reason we don't do it is because we don't want to piss off the people who hold the rights, because we have to renew these things at some point, and you don't want to do shady things like that,
There is also situations in which a lot of those countries will be non-exclusive, where anyone can sell their books there. So, like India in particular is usually very non-exclusive because there's not like for whatever reason, it's easier to like allow whomever has access to that to distribute the book there. I know that our distributors in the UK and the US, you can get certain books if they're marked like that. You can order them one-off to your country. Like, say you're in Romania and you want a copy of one of our books, it's possible to get that if we have the non-exclusive rights to that part of the world.
Right.
But it depends.
The other reason this has sort of come up lately is, discussion of what books are eligible for the Best Translated Book Award, which is an American award.
Right.
And, of course, there are a lot of publishers outside of America publishing things in English in translation for the first time. And the sort of line, the rule is, and to me it makes perfect sense, it has to be distributed here. It can't just exist in English somewhere else in the world, even if it doesn't exist in an American edition. And unless that book is available to readers, available to bookstores to order, it should not be eligible for the award. And
that's the exact logic behind it. And the same thing goes with if people are an ebook only publisher, if the book's only available through Amazon, say, or CreateSpace or whatever, then it doesn't count because it has to be available to readers. Like it can't just be like one small thing. But yes, with the UK presses, there's a bunch of them that are distributed through Dufour that do a lot of translations, including the one that we were talking about today. Is it Jan Carr?
Is that right? I was going to say Jantra, but I could be wrong.
Is it? Yeah, it is. It's Jantar. Jantar, something like that. And I don't know if they're new. They're new to me, but they're doing a bunch of Czech books that look really beautiful and kind of cool. But they're distributed by Dufour Editions, which is based in Pennsylvania. So all their books come out here in the U.S. and are available to stores to order. So their books are eligible for the award. So yeah, so that is Right. It makes sense to me, but I know it always comes up as a question.
No, and it's one of these weird, very insidery things about publishing translations is which territories are you getting the rights to, and of course, for a place like New Directions or Europa or somebody who doesn't, we don't have a lot of money to spend on advances or whatever, which is why we don't end up with the big, Jonathan Littell books. Not that we want him, but point being, we're only, if the book if it gets too expensive to pay for the world US right or world English rights, we're just going to step back a little and say, okay, we'll just take North American.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's cheaper, obviously. And then you let the publisher or the rights holder try to make their money somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do the same thing. And like a lot of times if it's one of those books that's going to be a big book or that they're trying to auction off, they could try and like preempt it by just getting the North American rights with like various caveats, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's a complicated situation, I suppose.
It is complicated, and it does cause, unfortunately, there's nothing I would like better as a bookseller than to give people access to everything. But, there are laws about these things. And
we used to, at the bookstore in Quail Ridge Books in Raleigh, we would always order from Gardner's. Do you know of Gardner's, the UK like wholesaler?
No.
Essentially. I don't know. I think they still exist. I don't know how much business they do anymore because I think things are a little bit more regulated than they were in the late 90s. But they would ship over, we'd order like a ton of stuff from them, a lot of like UK mysteries that the customers are interested in. And they'd ship us like stuff every month essentially by the M bags. I don't know if you remember these. This is really like a trip down memory lane, but M bags were these blue fucking giant canvas bags that you could ship things overseas in. I assume that they were blue and sort of waterproof because everything was shipped by boat. But we'd get these crazy blue bags with boxes of Gardner's in it. And at that time, that was when the first and second volumes of Harry Potter were available, and we stocked all of the UK versions, including like the first edition of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And I remember a friend at the bookstore being like, you should buy like 5 of these because these are going to be worth a ton of money in a few years when this book like really blows up. I was like, that just sounds stupid. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And of course, like, sure enough, I don't know how much those sell for, but probably a decent amount of money.
I'm going to look it up right now.
Like eBay first edition.
Well, they're not that expensive.
Okay.
Maybe. You could probably get a couple thousand for it.
Ah, Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. I was hoping you were going to say like a couple hundred, but oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's $3,000, $29.99 on eBay.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
Your kids are not going to college.
Nope. They've got to earn their way there anyways. That's the rule. We're good publishing. Can't afford college. Anyways, staying on that, though, there is one other thing that we wanted to talk about for sure is this announcement today. Oh, where'd it go? From Amazon that they are committing $10 million to translating books into English.
Over the next 5 years.
Over the next 5 years. They sent out a press release today that in celebration of its 5th year, Amazon Crossing announced a $10 million commitment over the next 5 years to increase the number and diversity of its books in translation. Then they cite that they're one of the largest publishers of translated literature in the U.S., which comes from our database, that since 2010, they've published more than 200 titles from 29 countries written in 19 different languages, which is impressive. Then they open up a new website for people to suggest titles at called translation.amazon.com/submissions, which is great. They're going to be at Frankfurt, all that kind of stuff. That's a significant amount of money.
Yes, it is. That's a lot of books. You can publish a lot of books at $10 million.
Yeah, you can. And if you break it down, like $2 million a year is, you could do a lot. And the investment will go towards fees paid to translators over the next 5 years and increasing the countries and languages represented on the list. Now, I don't read a lot of their books because a lot of them do fall into the like historical fiction, mystery, thriller, women's fiction, sci-fi, fantasy stuff, which I'm not particularly into. But the Beiswa book they reference on here, and that's huge. But the thing that I've noticed in going through the database recently and entering in some of their more recent titles is that they're doing the new book by Laura Restrepo, who was was a Colombian representative for our Women's World Cup of Literature this past summer, and did fairly well and has like a really solid reputation. And in this press release, it references that they're going to be doing a book by Laura Esquivel, the Like Water for Chocolate author. Mm-hmm. Those are names that I would not normally have associated with Amazon Crossing.
I mean, no, but can you understand that, the people who have these rights are just hoping to, reestablish themselves in the American market?
Absolutely.
How long ago was Like Water for Chocolate published?
Oh, like a trillion years ago. But she had a couple of books after that were published by someone, I think.
Yes, I can't remember who.
I want to say HarperCollins, but I'm probably wrong. I'm getting there really quickly. Here's one that came out in 2007 from Washington Square Press.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hardcover was published by Atria Books, which is part of Simon & Schuster, I believe. Yeah. So that's like a solid Big Five publisher. But I mean, it's interesting that they are doing that, and that this, no matter, whatever problems and issues there are, we could go on forever. Committing that amount of money to paying translators and to getting more of these books out there, including big and small names, that's a commitment. They could do a lot more, clearly, because they're making whatever trillions of dollars a year. But nevertheless, good for them, I guess.
Yeah, and it's good for translators. They get work. They get whatever sort of recognition. It's, who knows, some of these might actually break out and become actual, cultural sort of, I don't want to say phenomenon, but, they might actually develop readership beyond people who download things from Amazon,
Yeah. And they still don't have distribution for the print books that gets into stores, do they?
As far as I know, no. I don't know any bookseller that is willing to go through the hassle of getting these books in the store.
I know that some of them are through Houghton Mifflin Harcourt as that New Harvest imprint or whatever, but I felt like bookstores kind of block that too.
No one has let me know about it at the bookstore, and I'm sure they're doing stuff from the French. So
that's true. They probably are. They have to be, and they could find that pretty quickly. But yeah, it is good for translators, I think, more so than anyone else.
Yes. And, for what all of us do in general, I guess, just showing a bit more commitment to it. I also like that they do actually, on the one hand, it sucks to be sort of ghettoized and, okay, here's books in translation. But on the other hand, because they're doing so much money, doing so many books, it does kind of feel like they can boost it a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of their books actually sell pretty well. Within maybe not, obviously not in the print stores and not in print versions in bookstores, but I think some of them actually do very well for like sci-fi and horror and people that are into those kind of things, because they have like the network to market them to those readers. And a lot of people, as we've talked about this, I think a million times, but a lot of publishers that do translations focus almost strictly on literary fiction and poetry and high-minded stuff, and not necessarily the more pulpy, readable books that a lot of readers like.
Right. So if they can get to those people, and if they, they have their algorithm, they have people's sales histories, if they can find a way to, liken a translation to a non-translation in a genre, they'll be happy to do so,
Yeah. And it is that focus on genre. There also were, at the, I don't know if we ever talked about it on here, but at the Penworld Voices Festival, there was the event at Albertine with Margaret Carson and Alta Price, I believe. And Rob Spillman was on it, and I forget who else, Susan Bernowski maybe, about women in translation. And Amazon was the one publisher that they noted had published more books by female authors than male authors in translation.
And I think that has to do with the genre stuff, but
I think so too.
It's still a good thing.
Yeah. And that's something that they kind of foreground that is like increase the number and diversity of its books in here. So that's a positive. I know we can talk about the women in translation thing more detail later, but I did come up with all the first round of numbers about that, and it's pretty bleak.
Yeah, I saw the first round. I was going to suggest we maybe cover that by itself on another podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One more Amazon thing to get to.
Right, which is this announcement. I guess this is today.
Yeah, this was last week.
It was last week that Amazon might be opening a bookstore in Seattle.
Which, of course, where else would they open a store?
Yeah, because it's like it's so funny. I lost the article here, but I know that the article I have the wrong one open. Is it?
I have the shelf awareness one open.
That's what I'm trying to find. But the one that I sent you, and I found it too, was like saying like that the reason that they suspect it's Amazon is that in this one particular, I guess, building area, University Village, there's a business that's registered as like Ann Bookstore, like ANN Bookstore, and that they're putting in bookshelves, and there's no such business as Ann Bookstore, so they're sure that it must be Amazon, like hiding it. It's kind of fun. It's kind of a funny way of like promoting the whole thing. But do you think what do you think would happen? I mean, there's a quote from Robert Sindelar from Third Place Books, and they're saying like, well, our customers aren't going to go there. They come here for the experience. It's not going to make any difference. Not really. I mean, they will be selling the same thing and competing, but the people are coming here because they like our store specifically. But what do you think? How do you think that will play out?
I think Robert is mostly right, but I do think that, every independent bookstore has people who shop there only because it's the most convenient location. And if this store really is opening not that far away, I forget, it actually did like lay out it's like a mile.
It's a mile and a half away, and I think it's in an area where the Barnes and Noble used to be.
Yeah, there's a mall. I mean, have you been out there? Do you know?
Yeah, I know where it is, more or less.
So, yeah, I mean, it's across the highway basically from where Robert is, I think.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But it's a different type of neighborhood. The one that it's rumored to be going into is like on the edge of the University of Washington's campus, hence the name University Village. He's sort of at the edge of that, more on the edge of that, sort of getting into the residential older crowd. So I think he's right. He's probably not going to lose too many of his core customers. But I do think, for the people who buy like 2 books a year, just Google Maps, what's the closest bookstore? They're going to end up there, unfortunately.
Yeah, probably.
In the end, I remember somebody where was it? Somebody who works at Nicola's Books and in Ann Arbor. I asked them about, the closing of Borders when that happened, because Borders was headquartered there. And it was one of their last physical locations was in Ann Arbor. And he told me, he said, in the end, I think it kind of sucks that they closed because, as much as we find their taste and the way they do business sort of appalling, at least it reminds people that you shop for books in a store.
Yeah.
As opposed to online. And that there might be a little bit of a silver lining in this, in that, Amazon opening a store that I can't imagine is going to be branded exactly the same way as their website. I mean, who knows? Maybe it will be. But, why? It seems like if that were the case, they would be opening a store in order to cannibalize their own sales. It just makes no sense. Like, they're trying to expand their sales, not switch sales, right?
Yeah.
So they are trying to, get in on this idea that, yes, people do like buying books in a store. And if they're going to reinforce that by opening a store, then it can only help other bookstores in the area, I would think. So I don't think it's like, by any means bad news for any other store around there.
I remember reading a report once about like Barnes & Noble talking about when they added or subtracted stores, that they had assumed always that if they closed down a store that was near another one, their customers, a lot of them would shift over to the other store, right? But that it didn't really happen that way. That people that there's a store in their area that they passed, they would buy books there. If there wasn't, whatever, they'd order them online or they just wouldn't buy them. So I think you're right that it's not necessarily, the immediate cannibal. It could be new customers that are right there that just pass that store and are aware of it and haven't been going to a bookstore before. So maybe it's not the worst thing ever. But
right.
Did you see the thing about how much they're going to pay booksellers?
Yeah, I was reading, what does it say here? Amazon's recruited at least one relatively new bookseller for the, quote, new initiative. The job pays $18 an hour.
Which is a lot higher than most bookselling jobs, right?
Yes, absolutely. Even in New York.
Yeah, that's wild.
Where cost of living is ridiculous.
It's pretty high in Seattle too, isn't it?
It's high. I don't think it's that high. I don't know. Did they raise their minimum wage recently?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
It's certainly not $18 an hour.
No.
But no. But I know San Francisco recently instituted a higher minimum wage. And I think with it, a lot of booksellers that, very happily decided to raise their hourly salaries too. So,
yeah, I don't know what else to say about Amazon.
Opening a bookstore. I will say, when we were talking about this beforehand, said, well, yeah, but they've announced these things before and they've never come through. And to your point, there's a Wall Street Journal article dated October 9th, 2014, so basically a year ago, about their plans to open a store in New York City that, as far as I know, does not exist.
We were literally right there. Like on Friday, I was with the kids and took them to see the Empire State Building, and I did not see any Amazon store. So yeah, I don't think it's there.
No, I mean, I would know about it.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I would know about an Amazon store.
I'm pretty sure you would as well. So yeah, yeah, who knows? It could turn out to be like a place where they try and sell their Kindle Fire and their Kindle TV and that Echo thing or whatever the hell it's called.
Echo?
Yeah, have you seen these commercials? They're like the Amazon. It's like something out of Black Mirror. It's like a cylinder, and you talk to it, and it talks back to you, and it does shit for you, like tells you the weather. Or it's like Siri, but like a standalone thing that can play music, and I don't know what. I think it's called Echo.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
It looks it's like one of those creepy things that people who are like into technology probably think is super cool, but whatever. The commercials are weird because it's always like reciting things like about what the announce or like the echo thing. Someone's waking up and they're like, today in the news, like, NASA reported new findings from Pluto and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, what's the weather like? Echo? It's like, it'll be 72 degrees and rainy today. It's just, I don't know. I'm not into this stuff. I've gotten old. I don't even care.
Yeah, basically what you described is exactly what it is. But it also plays music from your whatever.
It can play music. I think especially if you buy it, then you get access to all the like Pandora and all that stuff, but also to Amazon's streaming music, Prime Music. Yeah.
It very notably leaves off iTunes.
Yes, it does. Didn't iTunes do something weird recently too, where they're cutting? Oh, I don't remember. I might have that wrong. Oh, I think it was that Amazon wouldn't sell streaming services on their devices, other competing streaming services. I think it was them that wouldn't do it. But whatever. Yep.
Makes sense.
Yep. So do you have any rants or raves?
No. My rant is going to be very succinct. Chase Utley is the worst human being in the world.
I second that half-heartedly because I think that the TBS announcers are also deserving of that. They're not the worst human beings. They're just really bad.
They're really bad. Cal Ripken, for whatever achievements he had on the field, has turned out to be a really bad announcer.
Yes. I think Eckersley is on the St. Louis broadcast. Not very good either. Like it's all they should not have games. But Chase Utley, yes, that was the worst.
And it wasn't even like there was a certain way in which I can understand what he was doing as a baseball player.
Oh yeah,
actually, the umps did something far worse by giving him second base after the entire thing.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I remember trying to take people out on double plays, but like you can't start sliding then. It was never that. I don't think
it was pretty bad. He was. I mean, I didn't look at it. Like I watched the night it happened. I obviously was yelling at the TV and in the bar and whatever. And then came home and was watching their discussion of it on whatever MLB Network, and then I just ignored all the discussion of it for 2 days. And then, of course, they showed it at the beginning of the broadcast last night, and it's the first time I had seen it since. Oh my God, he was so far offline.
It was not even
so late. It was so bad. It was so egregiously bad.
He doesn't even really go into a slide until he's at the base.
Yeah,
and he doesn't come close to even touching the base with his hand.
No, he's so far offline. It's really bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, we just lost a bunch of listeners.
Yep. So, no, I don't know. A lot of people, I think, have seen this play because it came up a lot. Like, all over.
Right.
Yeah. As a rave, I'll go the opposite and say that I took the kids to the New York Comic-Con for the first time ever for Family Day on Sunday, and they fucking loved it. And it was actually pretty fun. I don't think it's for everyone because it's super, super crowded. But I've said this before, and it came out to be true that like it takes place in the Javits Center, which is where Book Expo America has been for the past 10 years, I believe. And Book Expo draws in like 20,000 people maybe, and it's filled with depression and just it's kind of sad, and everything just seems like heavy and weighty and like just kind of awful and desperate as a vibe a lot of times, especially on the exhibition hall. This had like 125 to 150,000 people, I guess, attend Comic-Con. I don't know how many were there on that day, but it's going to be a lot because there was so many people, and it was much bigger. They used all the floors in the Javits Center and like Javits North, which I didn't even know really existed, which is like an annex area off to the side. And all through that, it was crowded with people who were not depressed and like looking at a bleak future, but were actually like enjoying themselves. So it's like quite a contrast. It's what I always suspected it would be, but it's stunning to see like how different the vibe of those two shows is these days. And it's not like publishing's dying or like whatever. Like all that stuff is also overblown, but like our people just seem so much less like enthusiastic.
This is true. I really don't know what the cure is, if there's anything to be done. It's just the way it is.
It really is, but it's a very marked difference.
I will say I was at a bar Sunday night, 7:30 or so.
Uh-huh.
And we're sitting outside and we can sort of see the door where people are coming out. And all of a sudden this guy comes out wearing, the clothes were not that outrageous. They were, all black, whatever. It's New York City, right?
Right.
But he had the white makeup, green dyed hair, purple lipstick. Perhaps you know something out here. The new Jared Leto version of the Joker for the new Batman movie.
Yep.
He was dressed up as that. He'd clearly just been at... We were all looking at him as he came in, and we were all just like, oh, Comic-Con, that's right. It took us a minute. We were like, he might just be dressed up like this as a matter of course, but he was probably at Comic-Con.
He probably was. There's a lot of the costume things. Like a lot.
People get really into it.
They do, and there's some of them are super over the top. There was a guy that was just wearing a Speedo, too. Like a very not athletic... How do you say this? Like a chubby guy. Like he wasn't like enormously fat, but he was, he wasn't healthy. I mean, he wasn't in shape. He wasn't someone that's like in shape, but he was wearing just a Speedo there.
Now, where does that fit into the?
I have no idea. I do not know at all. But it was a thing.
Was he painted blue?
No, he was not painted any color. He was normal with just a Speedo and shoes.
Got it. So not Dr. Manhattan.
Nope.
Wow, we're getting nerdy here.
I know who you're talking about, obviously, but it was the costume thing is intense. But it whatever. Kids do what they're gonna do, but they get into it, and it is crazy to think about to me, in terms of the contrast too, that people paid like $40 at least to go there to buy stuff. Like they have some free things, but like the vast majority of people are buying things. They're buying like prints from their favorite artists, or like comic books that they are looking for, or like other merchandise and collectibles. But they're spending a lot of money in that show, and they paid to get in to do that, which I can't possibly imagine would happen if it were like a book thing.
Wait, when it's open to the public at the NBA, those people get in free or no?
I'm pretty sure they get in free or for a very minimal charge.
Like $10 or something.
Yeah, something like that. And a lot of things are still given away then. They can buy a lot of things, but I think there's a lot of like giveaways as well.
Yeah, they're just there for the giveaways.
Yeah, and maybe they're buying stuff. I don't know. Maybe they're just there to see some authors, but I don't think I went there to check it out. I forget what do they call it? It's like ReaderCon or something like that.
That sounds right.
And I went there this last time just to see what it was like, and it was fine, but it wasn't that spectacularly BookCon. It wasn't spectacularly crowded or like enthusiastic. It was a lot of like middle-aged or like middle grade girls, like young adult readers. And a lot of like the promotions and a lot of the events were geared towards like young adult stuff.
Well, that's great, but
so it's like it's not quite as wide, I guess, or quite as broad and all inclusive. But
can I rave about a book since this podcast? I've been reading, and I don't know why it took me so long, all these years, to get to it. But Summer of Hate by Chris Krause.
Oh yeah.
She's I don't even know how to describe her career. Sort of an art critic, sort of a novelist. That everything's sort of tinged with what feel like autobiographical elements. Anyway, published by Semiotext. She's considered part of that world, and I don't know why I thought it was more experimental than it is. And this is not to say like, oh, I thought it was going to be hard and it's easy, and that way that's why I like it. It's that it reminds me a bit of reading Harry Matthews' like Cigarettes.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of just a novel. It's just so incredibly well done that you just can't stop reading it. Like it's just a really, really good book. Like there's intelligence there, and it definitely draws on her own intelligence and her knowledge of a lot of subtleties of the art world and things like that. But it is still just a really good story told really well. And, she's fantastic. I'm definitely going to be buying all of her books and reading them. So.
Yeah, she has a number of books that are available, too. Like, I Love Dick is one of the big ones.
I have that as well. I bought them both at the same time. So.
Nice. Yeah, she's awesome. I've been reading all of our books that are coming out. So I just finished like Josephine Klugart, but I did start. And Josephine Klugart's book is really beautiful, but because it doesn't come out until next August, there's really no point in like talking about it here. But the other book that I've been reading, I finished Ellie Smith's Artful, which I really enjoy. But I also started reading that Ricardo Piglia book, Target in the Night, which I think you will like. I like it so far. I'm like maybe a third of the way into it because I've been balancing like 4 different books all at once for all different things I had to get done. But I think it's pretty cool, and it's interesting and fun to read. But I want to see like how this kind of paranoid detective aspect to it really develops over the last 2/3 of it.
Yeah, I feel like every book that I pick up done by like a literary press, and this is on my Deep Vellum, which of course we will have our lists at the end of the podcast. But
oh, shit,
we'll figure it out. Don't worry.
Okay.
But usually there's like this promise of this, mystery element or noir element that sort of fades away. I'd be curious to see if this actually maintains it throughout the book. You know what I mean?
I have a sense that it's going to fade away, but it does begin with the death of this guy who came from New York with these 2 twins, these beautiful twins who are inheriting a lot of money from their father, and he's dead, and it's not explained how he died or what anything like that. But or at least so far, he's found in his room in a hotel, having been murdered. Someone had tried to call him. There's like then there's like all these weird interludes about like the fact that people were scandalized by the way that he was like involved with both of the twins and that they were all sleeping together. And then there's a cool bit about a horse race that's pretty interesting. And it's all like sort of speculating as to why he would have been. And why is he in Argentina in the first place? What was he doing there? How did that tie into his death? But I have the feeling that it's going to fall away from that at some point in time and become more larger in scope and in terms of like Argentine history and things that are spoken and not spoken at that point in time. But we'll see. But the inspector is pretty funny. It's got a good sense of like humor to it too. Like it's so far it's pretty good. I mean, I really wish I had more time that I could have devoted to it instead of having to like. I've been reading that and the Indonesian book Home that Deep Vellum brought out, and Klugart's book and the Allie Smith book, and it's like I'm finishing none of them. I'm just reading like 20 pages here and there, which is kind of a mess. This week I get back on track. I have to, hopefully. But yeah.
Well, yes. Good luck. Baseball is ruining it all too.
Baseball is ruining me, but so is the fact that next Friday we have our first ever celebration gala here. That we're selling tickets to, that we have like a band playing at, we have palm readers, we have a huge amount of food, a silent auction, and all the stuff for that is sort of ruining everything as well, because like every day it's like stress about like, is anyone buying any tickets? Has anyone bought anything? Please, someone buy tickets and come to our event.
I will not be able to make it up there.
No, there's a lot of people that have bought them and that we're giving away. So if like people from throughout the country, if anyone's listening to this and wants to support us, because it is our like one and only fundraiser we've ever really done as a full thing. Any tickets that people are buying that are not from the area or that they aren't going to come, we're giving away to students and to other people from Rochester area that can't afford tickets or whatever. So it's not like they'll be wasted. The money will benefit us, and the tickets will be given to someone so that they can come find out about this crazy group of girls, the Fox sisters.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, crazy. That's the crazy group of girls. The three sisters who believe they could talk to the dead, and started the modern spiritualist movement.
Now the palm readers makes more sense.
Right. Exactly, and that's why we have the 2 palm readers that will be there. Were trained at Lilydale, which is where the Fox sisters' house is located now. It's like a small, very small town that's basically just to train people on how to do seances and stuff like that. This is a very weird world that we have gotten into.
Yes, it is. The book is called Rochester Knockings, since you haven't mentioned it yet.
Yeah, the book is called Rochester Knockings, a novel of the Fox sisters, and it's by Hubert Haddad, a French author, and it's translated by Jennifer Groves.
Published.
What's that?
When is it published?
It comes out.
What date are you publishing it?
It comes out today.
Today? Well,
today.
Congratulations.
Today being Tuesday, October 13th.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just out now. Whole thing is nerve-wracking. You guys never had to do anything quite like this at New Directions as a for-profit.
No, we throw parties, but we don't really do. Yeah, we're a for-profit, so.
Yeah, so is that like...
No, we did things this like triple canopy and a public space. And it's really so many. It's like planning a wedding, you know.
It really is. And getting like people to donate stuff for the silent auction. I mean, it's really been Kaya and this student Daniel that have gotten a lot of the work done for it. And without them, it would have been like all fucked up. But nevertheless, like stressful. So after next Friday, I can read books normally again, I hope. And after the Cardinals lose tonight, I can just watch baseball and enjoy it.
Yeah, yes, I clearly want the Mets to win the game I'm going to tonight in a few hours.
Oh, shit, that's right.
Yeah. Going tonight.
That'll be fun. Yeah, I hope they win. That's a good experience. I got lucky the one time, and I was in St. Louis when they won the World Series, so enjoy it. That was very fun, but
we'll see.
I think that's probably all we need to do on this this podcast.
Yeah, we covered it all.
Covered it all. Amazon.
For the time being. Yes.
Rights, Nobel Prizes, Chase Utley, Rochester Knockings.
Discussion. In the next few weeks, we'll have to talk about the disparity in women in translation. And
I'll be able to get more of that done.
Maybe that'll be a good time to have
you keep cutting.
Maybe we can have our guest stop.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
She would be good for this. I'll email her right now, actually.
Okay. And that will give me a good excuse to finish doing all the data entry I have to do.
All right. Talk to you soon. Your kids are not going to college.